I had just started college. It was my first year, so when I settled in my dorm room, I was pretty excited to meet my roommate. He came in a few hours after me, but he was not what I was hoping for. I am a very social person, and so is he, so at first things were all right. His name was Lade. When we met, we had a decent conversation, but I immediately knew we weren't going to be great friends. He said a lot of questionable things and liked to make stupid and inappropriate jokes. He talked a lot about guns and how he likes to hunt and dissect the animals after. I would normally think that's fine as a hobby, but with him it just felt different. He seemed dangerous. I hate to make assumptions like this, but I'm pretty sure he wasn't mentally stable. While we were talking about animals, I told him that 3 months ago my dog passed away, and Lade, without showing any remorse, teased me about it. I found that very hurtful. At that point, I started thinking of getting a transfer and find myself a new roommate, but I told myself that I have to wait at least a week to see if anything changes. For the next few days, I saw Lade talking to a lot of people, but none of them really accepted him into his group. People weren't feeling comfortable around him. I met a friend group of my own, and Lade would often try to join us, but every time he did, he just talked way too much, and the things he was saying were not related to our conversation. His words were really hurtful a lot of the time. I don't know if he even realized, but he was too straightforward and mean. He called fat people fat and stupid people stupid. Everything he said was true, but considering he didn't have any friends, he could have been nicer. Eventually, he realized people don't like hanging out with him, and me as his roommate was the only person he hung out with. He always followed me around, which sometimes bothered me, but because I felt a little bad for him, I didn't say anything. He started being the pick-me boy every time he came with me to hang out with the boys, saying things like, "Why does nobody like me? Raise your hand if you are the worst person in the group." He said those things out of the blue, not at all related to our conversation. I noticed that small things quickly make him mad. When he said something mean about someone and they responded with an insult, he would take that very personal. The thing that would make him mad the most was confrontation. Every time someone directly told him to leave because they don't want him around, he would get furious. In the first week, I had to pull him off of 2 people he was trying to fight, because they said exactly that. As much as I wanted to help Lade and be his friend, I just couldn't. I found him very disrespectful and annoying. Because he was following me around all the time, people associated me with him and his behavior. As soon as the first week went by, I requested a transfer to another room with a new roommate, but I didn't yet tell Lade about it. Meanwhile, he made a new friend. I was happy to see him hanging out with him and giving me more space to myself, but I soon realized Lade's new friend wasn't really a good person. They told me the transfer will take a few days to process, so until then I'll be staying in my old room. The next day I went out to play some ball with my friends, and when I came back I saw Lade and his new friend snooping on my computer. I left my computer on the desk unlocked. They had access to everything. I saw them looking at my private messages on Instagram and looking at private notes I didn't want anyone to see. As soon as I saw that, I snapped. All the anger and frustration I had building up towards him, I let it all out. I saw Lade panic for a second, not knowing what to do, but then he got aggressive. Both him and his friend started pushing and threatening me. They were both bigger than me, so I wasn't about to fight them. I just took my computer and slept over in my friend's room. I woke up to good news from the dorm office. I got an email that my transfer is ready. I still haven't told Lade about it, but at that point, I couldn't care less. I went to my old room to get the rest of my things, only to see everything I owned was trashed and thrown all over the floor. Lade wasn't there, so I just stuffed everything in my bags and went out to get to my new room. On my way out, I saw Lade and told him about the transfer. He looked surprised, but not in a good way. He just pushed me into a wall and locked himself in his room. The new roommate was much better. Still not the person I would normally hang out with, but 1,000,000 times better than Lade. That same night when I went to bed, I was woken up by some clicking noise. From under the door crack, I saw the light in the hallway was on, and from the shadow I could tell a person was standing right in front of the door. I got up and quickly opened the door. There he was. It was Lade trying to pick the lock. Embarrassed, he immediately shut the door and ran away. I called the dorm security and he got arrested. He was telling them that it was just a prank, but I know it was much deeper than that. I have no idea what he was trying to do. After a while, he got back on campus. I still see him almost every day. Now he is living in a dorm building next to mine. Hopefully he doesn't try anything again, but luckily the guards have a close eye on him, and he doesn't have access to our building anymore. It was my last month of college, before moving back to my city to find a job. There was this girl I shared a few classes with, and I really liked her. Her name was Alexis. Me and Alexis sometimes exchanged a few words, but never had an actual conversation. We knew about each other, but I wouldn't say we were friends. I just never had the guts to actually approach her and ask her out. Alexis and I were both finishing college that year, so I knew if I don't make a move now, I'll never get another chance. I made up a plan on how I'll do it, and was determined that tomorrow was the day I'll ask her on a date. I said that before, but I ended up not doing anything, but this time had to be different. My plan was to buy a bottle of wine and invite her to the woods behind my college dorm. It sounds creepy, but it's a nice spot to hang out. A lot of the college students go there. It has a few private benches among the trees. Nobody bothers you there. The next day we had a class together and I walked up to her. I asked her something about our last exam, and right as I was about to ask her out, her friend came over and I just awkwardly left. I was so mad at myself for not making a move, but I had another chance to do it after the lesson. When the professor finished talking, I immediately grabbed my things and went up to her. Without thinking for a second, I just asked her out. I told her I have a bottle of wine left over from a party and would love to share it with her. She laughed at first, but eventually agreed to go out with me. Later that day, we met up in front of my dorm building, and I showed her the spot. We drank the wine and had a great conversation. We talked for a few hours, so it started getting dark out. After a while, we both went silent for a second, and I thought that was the perfect time to go for the kiss. As I was leaning in, I heard a branch break. We both quickly stood up to see what was going on. Branches kept breaking one after the other, and the leaves were rustling very loudly. The sound was only getting louder and louder. Whatever was out there, it was coming towards us. Usually I would just sprint home in that situation, but because Alexis was with me, I had to act like a man. I yelled out, "Who goes there?" No response. I yelled out again, but still nobody responded. The rustling of the leaves just kept getting closer and closer. Me acting like I wasn't afraid, I told Alexis to stay at the bench and I'll go check who was there. I walked towards the sound, and it didn't take long for me to find out who was there. Or should I say, what was there? Just a few meters from the bench, I moved a thick bush from where the sound was coming from. I was so terrified walking there. My hands were literally shaking as I was moving the bush. As soon as I saw it, I screamed. There was a big brown bear standing behind it. I must have scared the bear because that beast stood up on two legs and started growling. In that moment, I wanted to run directly to my room, but I knew I had to go grab Alexis first. I went to the bench, but she was no longer there. I looked back and the bear was directly behind me. It was running at me. I grabbed the snacks we left on the bench and started running out of the woods. I heard the bear behind me getting closer and closer, so I threw the food on the floor. The bear suddenly stopped and started eating the chips I threw him. When I got out, I saw Alexis waiting for me. She said she ran out as soon as she heard me scream. I told her that I saw a bear in there, and we quickly ran upstairs to my room. I wasn't mad at her for running away. I probably would have done the same. We continued our night in my room talking about our experience. It was definitely the most scary thing to happen to both of us, but because of it, we had an amazing night. We're still together to this day. We often talk and laugh about it. I'm just glad we made it out safe.
I live in a studio apartment on the ground floor. I always remember to close the window before going to sleep because it's an easy access into my apartment. One time I forgot, and that left me traumatized. I go to college that is on a beautiful campus. Near our campus is a highway underpass where lives a group of homeless people. They are calm and never cause any problems. I walk past them from time to time and sometimes exchange a few words with some of them. Most of them are nice and always have some interesting story to tell, but some of them are clearly abusing some illegal substances. There was a woman there that I usually talked to, and she was very nice. She would always offer me some food or drinks that I would refuse, saying I'm in a hurry, even if I wasn't, but I still appreciate the gesture. I never found any of them endangering. Clearly I was wrong. Every time I passed them at night, the woman would offer to walk me home, saying, "It's dangerous for such a beautiful lady to be wandering the streets at night." I always refused, but she so kindly insisted that I just gave in and let her walk me to my apartment, or at least what she thought was my apartment. I never really told her where I lived, just to be safe. The woman would drop me off in the building next to mine. I would go into that building, wait a few minutes, and then go home. I just didn't know her well enough to trust her with such personal information. Little did I know it wouldn't take long for her to find out the truth. One time we had a party on the campus, and as I usually do, I went there. We drank a lot. I had an exam that day, so I was feeling really tired. I decided to call it a night at around midnight, which for me is early. On my way home, I passed the homeless group, and me being drunk, I started talking all sorts of nonsense to them. I don't remember much of the conversation, but I know that once I stopped blabbering and was about to go on my way, the woman offered to walk me home. I rejected, but after her insisting, she walked me anyway. Everything was fine until she discovered I was lying to her this whole time. She dropped me off like usual, at the building in front of my actual apartment complex. I was tired and drunk, so I wasn't really thinking straight. Instead of going in that building and waiting for her to leave, I just walked straight home. When I got to my door, I realized my mistake, but I didn't really care. She is a nice woman, and I was just being overly cautious with not telling her where I lived. That's what I thought, but it was far from the truth. I got home feeling a little sick, so I opened the window and laid on the bed. Because of all the alcohol I consumed, I quickly passed out. In the middle of the night, I woke up due to the wind blowing in my face. I left the window open. I felt like I was about to vomit, so I immediately ran to the bathroom to throw up. It happened so suddenly I didn't even turn the lights on. I closed the window and went back to bed. A few seconds went by, and that is when I heard a whisper. "Are you okay?" My heart sank. I didn't know what just happened. I was so terrified I didn't move an inch. She whispered again. "You lied to me." I quickly turned on the light, and there she was. The homeless woman was sitting on my chair watching me sleep. Her eyes were wide open. She told me she's here to look after me. I screamed at her as loud as I could, and she just sat there looking at me. I took my phone and ran out of my apartment. Outside, I called the cops. When they arrived, we went back in, but by then she was already gone. I told them everything that happened. They checked around the neighborhood but didn't find her. I was so scared I didn't really sleep that night. I was overthinking everything. What was she trying to do? What if they never find her? What if she comes back? In my head, I was going crazy. The next day, on my way to a lesson, I carefully walked past the homeless group to see if maybe she is hiding there. I just wanted to see her get arrested, so I can forget about all of this. I was sure she wasn't going to be there. She should be hiding somewhere I couldn't find her, considering she did commit a felony last night. I walked past them, and there she was, greeting me like nothing happened. She even asked me how I slept last night. I just ran the other direction and called the police. When the police arrived, she was still there, happy as ever. The cops asked her if my story is true, and she didn't deny anything. She told the story exactly as it happened. She said, "She sneaked in my room through the window and sat down on my chair. She was there for full 2 hours before I noticed her. After I ran out, she got worried and went looking for me. In her words, she was just looking after me, making sure I'm all right. She never intended to hurt me or do anything wrong. I don't think she even realized that climbing through a window into somebody's apartment is against the law." When I heard her side of the story, I felt bad for calling the police. Maybe we could have just talked it out. The cops still had to arrest her. The woman was genuinely just trying to help me, but she didn't realize she committed a crime while doing so. What she did was wrong, but I still feel bad for her. 2 years later, I finished college and moved to another city, but not because of her. I never saw her after she got arrested. I have no idea what the right outcome is for a situation like that. A good person unintentionally doing the wrong thing for what they thought was the right reason. I hope she is all right.